Hey everybody, I got a Marshall 8100 here. This is the classic Valvestate 100-watt head made in the mid-90s. This one was made in 1993, as that's what Marshall told me. I contacted them because I was trying to find out how many of these white ones they made, because I've never seen another Model 8100 in white, but they weren't able to tell me, honestly. I guess they don't keep track of how many different color ones they made during the 90s. I'm not sure. But anyway, here it is. It's probably pretty rare. But this one's special because I completely overhauled it and replaced as many things as possible to try to make it the best sounding one that I could do. And yeah, I think it sounds great. So it has a clean channel too, and not bad. Got the reverb working really well. It's not a real dramatic reverb. It's not super splashy. As you can see, that's with the reverb up all the way. You can turn it down and it'd be pretty subtle, just a little bit. And right now this is with the neck pickup. It's a stock P90 style pickup, and the bridge pickup is a Gibson Tony Iommi humbucker. So a lot hotter than the neck pickup, and it's honestly kind of hard to get a clean tone with this pickup. With really hot pickups, it's hard to keep the clean channel clean, but it's possible. You can do it. Yeah, a little bit of crackle there from the... Clean channel also has a crunch mode, and you can hear that here. Usually there's going to be like a little volume drop when you engage the crunch mode. That's because it's actually putting clipping diodes in the signal, and that's how it's crunching out. And with those clipping diodes, you're limiting the maximum volume that it can get. So it's completely normal for the volume to drop down a bit. It is annoying, but if you're only using it, and that's not a foot switchable option, so it's going to either be clean or crunch anyway, so you just kind of set your volume as you want accordingly. Not a bad crunch. That's really decent, actually, you know? And so we go over to the boost channel, and that's where all your crazy gain is. Now, I used to think of this as kind of a one-trick pony kind of amp, where it just does like this one really, you know, tight, super gainy 90s sort of sound. But actually, if you fiddle around with it, you can get a variety of usable tones with it. And it's, yeah, like you go to OD1, I never liked this sound very much. I always thought it was too low gain to actually sound good. But if you can use it for something. It's sort of an intermediary between the crunch mode of the normal channel and the overdrive 2 sound. So it's like a little bit more gain than what you're going to get from the crunch mode, but not much more. I don't know. It's apples and oranges, I guess. I kind of prefer the crunch mode on the normal channel, but you might prefer this one. And then if you go back to overdrive 2 and you kind of turn that down a bit. Very articulate. I like that. shreddy. Now you have the, typical Marshall style tone stack with bass, middle, treble, but then the boost channel has this additional contour control, and it's really interesting because it allows you a very wide range of sort of like mid boost, mid cut, and it happens after the tube stage and after the main tone stack. So it's sort of like a mastered different sort of tone control where you can kind of get a lot of variety without having to mess with the main set of controls. And I think that's pretty cool. And I found you can do like really dumb stuff, like just turn everything up all the way. And you're like, well, that's going to sound bad. But actually this contour control can do some interesting stuff with that. It's like... It's like, that's not so great. That's a bit too scoop for my taste. But what you do is you just start turning it, and it's going to give you a lot of different sounds. And you hear how it just kind of jumps there at the end. That's like, this thing has kind of a wonky taper. And this is, one of the things I do is I replaced every single control in this. So that's stock. That's how it behaves. This is with a brand new contour control, and it's still doing this weird jumping thing. That's just into design. And I'm honestly not sure what taper of a control would really make this smoother. I think it's just one of those things where, they assume no one's going to really be using it with it turned all the way down. So they're just like, yeah, whatever, screw it. It sounds cool. Plenty of sweet spots anyway with the stock taper. I will say, right now it has a linear taper control, and what was in it that I replaced was actually an audio taper control. The reason why I use a linear taper is because that was the original spec in the schematic. So I was just following that. And honestly, the audio taper control behaves very similar as far as having these weird, wonky kind of spots where it will jump suddenly. It just happens in a different part of the rotation. And honestly, with it being like happening way towards the bottom here, I think that's fine. And maybe a reverse audio taper, or perhaps even better would be what's called a W taper, where it's kind of like in the middle, it's flat, but when you go to the left or to the right, you'll be getting different kind of audio logarithmic tapers. But they probably didn't want to bother with trying to find W taper pots for this, because those are kind of uncommon in certain values. But anyway, yeah, let's go for more. So yeah, there's a lot of great sounds in there. It's pretty easy to dial it in, I think. Let's see, we have the reverb on it. The reverb can only be turned on and off with the foot switch. So if you don't have the foot switch, the only way to get it on and off is to turn it up and down on the front panel. But I have the foot switch with this one, and I believe it's the original one, or at the very least, it's contemporary to it. If it's not the actual original one, it is an original 90s one in any case. So that sounds cool. Now, another thing this has is an effects loop. And the effects loop, it's a parallel effects loop. So you have this drying effect knob here. And when you, it's like a pan control between the dry signal and the effects signal. And when you have it in the middle, it should be more or less equal volume for both. And when you have it turned all the way to effect, it's going to be only the effect, and the dry signal is completely muted out. And as you can hear, there is, as you turn it up, yeah, you're hearing nothing because there's nothing in the effects loop right now, and the effects loop doesn't link over to itself if you have nothing plugged in. It's just two empty jacks. So let me demonstrate that really quick. I've got a Boss DD5 delay. I figure that's a pretty typical delay people would probably have. So let's see. Send goes to the input. Return comes from the output. And make sure it's turned on. I have the effects level on the delay turned up all the way. Let's get that clean again. Go all the way wet. That. And with reverb, you get a nice little thing happen. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I like how you can dial in some pretty nice tones with this. And it has a switch that's labeled 0 and -20. This is to set the level of the effects loop to match whether you're using pedals that are intended for a guitar level signal or whether you're using rack gear that's intended for a line level signal. So right now it's set to -20, and that is the low level signal, which would be for a guitar pedal. If you set it to 0, it'll still work, but with some pedals you might get distortion that you don't want. Like you're using a delay pedal or something, and maybe it's one that doesn't have a lot of headroom for line level signals, and so if you set that to 0, you might be getting some bad distortion. So the solution is to switch it to -20, and then it'll be happy. And yeah, otherwise, if the thing is turned up, you're not really hearing a difference. It's just gonna be like, so here's dry. It's like, just a tiny little difference in the level, and that's just because what it does is when it's in -20 mode, it is padding the signal from the send jack to be a lower level, but then it's boosting it at the input jack, at the return jack, so that it's going to match out and be the same. Yeah. I know some people just don't understand what that switch is about, so I'm telling you. Okay, so let's see, here's some little solo tones. So yeah, sounds pretty cool. As I said, I replaced all of the controls, like all the potentiometers for the controls have been replaced. So they're all brand new. I also replaced all the electrolytic caps, so they're brand new. And so yeah, this amp should be good for another 30 years at least. And I also did a few modifications inside to try to kind of make it sound a little bit nicer. And if you're willing to wait around, I have about 7 minutes of me showing you the inside and rambling somewhat coherently about that. Yeah, so stay tuned if you want to see what the inside and what all I did to it. But end result is, I think this is probably the best sounding Valvestate Model 8100 in the world, possibly, right now. But anyway, yep. Thanks for checking this out. See you later. Hey there, everyone. Before I button this thing up, I want to show you the inside so you can see what all I did to it. I gave it a complete overhaul and did a few little mods, mostly in the way of upgrading some components. So I'll just step through it from one side to the other. Here you can see I installed sockets. These are originally all soldered in, but I socketed them because, among other things, I want to experiment with some different op amps than what were originally specified to see if it maybe improved the performance a bit, and I think it did. So got the sockets for that purpose, but then also if anyone else who owns this amp later, if they want to swap out the stock parts, it should be no problem. And of course if something gets damaged also. But one thing, you can't really see it here because it's under the board, but here's the input op amp. And these are the ones that usually get fried. And it's because of static electricity frying the input of the chip and making it hiss really badly. It usually won't kill the chip outright, it'll just make it very hissy. I replaced the stock TLO72 with a Burr Brown OPA 2134. It has a similar kind of JFET input, so it tends to work well in similar circuits as the TLO72s, except it's much better performance. Much lower noise, much lower distortion, and in the case of being the first op amp in the circuit here, those are very desirable things. Just for fun, I stuck this Sozo cap in there. This is the first this is C1. This is the first coupling cap before the first chip there, and yeah, that was just for fun. But it's certainly not hurting things. All these filter caps have been replaced. Every single electrolytic cap in the entire amp has been replaced. This amp's 30 years old this year, and yeah, I figured may as well just do it so you get 30 more years out of it before they need replaced again. And all these gold ones are Nichicon FG series fine gold. You'll see these green ones here. These are the Nichicon Muse bipolar caps. All of the electrolytics that were in the signal path as coupling caps, they've all been replaced with the Muse bipolar caps, and it's a big improvement. I use them all the time in my pedals. This is the tone stack for the clean channel. These caps have all been replaced with nicer ones. I think it's cool. Whether it makes a huge difference in the tone, I think that ends up being subjective, but I just like having nicer parts when you can. It just makes it nicer. Whether it sounds better or not, I honestly don't care because the quality is better in any case. Though I do personally think it sounds better. Every single control has been replaced. Every potentiometer, all brand new. They were all crackly, like beyond repair. I tried cleaning them and they were beyond hope. You could not clean them. They were just too worn out, too trashed. So threw them all out, replaced every single one of them, all new. It works great. Let's see, new tube. It's made by PSVane. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but PSVANE. A new Chinese brand that's like a high-end sort of offshoot from Shugong, which is the main tube manufacturer that everyone gets all their Chinese tubes from. And PSVane is supposed to be like an upmarket alternative, making a little bit nicer tubes. And I tested this against some vintage ones I had, and it held its own. It's a really nice tube, and it sounds good in this amp. Another thing here, this brown Dale resistor here. This is the plate load resistor for the tube, and originally it was this little quarter watt thing, And while technically they can take the high voltage that the circuit has, it's really not good for it, and I think they fail after some time. And the tube circuit originally, when I started working on it, it had some issues with some weird squealing and some low oscillations happening. So apart from replacing the tube, I also replaced all the resistors where that high voltage is present. So it's going to be this one, and then this is a feedback resistor, and then this one is that's the cathode load resistor on the second stage that drives the boost channel tone stack. And I didn't mess with the caps for the boost channel tone stack because it used better caps than what the other channel had anyway. And also, to upgrade it to something nicer like the Sozo caps, it was just getting kind of too ungainly as far as trying to cram everything in here. Replace another coupling cap there with, these are nice, I like these. Couple more caps here, replace more coupling caps. This little orange one is actually the send to the reverb tank, and the chips with the reverb tank are these two right here, and I upgraded them to 5532s because they can deliver current better than what was their stock, and so it can actually do a better job of driving that tank, and the reverb does sound much improved compared to what it was before. It's still not a super great reverb, but it's definitely better than it was. Go down here to some more caps, and then here's the main power supply filter caps, and they were upgraded to larger size. They're now 4700 microfarad at 63 volts, whereas the stock ones were 2000 at 50 volt. And to be able to fit these, I had to actually drill out where they connect to the board, because the original lead spacing wasn't wide enough and the holes weren't big enough, so I just kind of made it work, and it was a clean job. There was plenty of room to do it. And these are also larger size than original. This amp is very quiet now. It has very little hiss. You can hear some hiss if you have everything on the boost channel and the volume just cranked. You'll hear some hiss, but at that point you'll be deaf, so I don't think it's really too much of a problem. It's definitely much quieter than they are stock. So overall, I think this amp is definitely good for another 30 years, and it's going to give you like no problems as far as the overall. I'd say this amp is good for 30 years. No problems with maintenance, because everything that's going to would have gone bad has been replaced. I also reflowed like all of these tall standing resistors. They have them standing up because they get so hot they would burn up the board. So they have them standing up, and that in itself is not bad, but all those joints get stressed from all the jiggling around, from the amp getting just bumped from moving it, and then also from the vibration from using it. And so there's a chance that those could get all cracked. So I reflowed all those. I also reflowed all the jacks, because the same thing, they can get cracked up. So yeah, I went over this thing, everything I could find, to get it right back to factory spec and beyond. So I think these various mods helped a lot, and then just general replacing all the stuff that was broken. So there you go.